Hey guys, it's Krista Watson here from Krista Quilts, back with more free motion fun. Today we're going to focus on two more swirl designs. These are called Spiral Flowers and Wavy Spirals. They can be found in my book, 99 Machine Quilting Designs. Go back and look at episode 25 where I've shared even more designs that you can do along this same family. Then stick around to the end of the episode where I show you how I quilted it on a real full-size quilt. So grab your practice sample and sketchbook so you can follow along with me. Let's get to it. Spiral Flowers is design number 72, and a variation called Wavy Spirals is design number 73, both from my book. Continuing with our swirl designs, I'm going to draw a basic swirl, and then as I come back out, I am going to add little bumps to turn this basic swirl into a cute little flower. Now, the number of bumps you add is up to you. Then I'm going to echo my bumps. You can touch the previous petals or not. And then at some point, let's see, I'm going to fill in lots of bumps in the side. Then I'm going to start with another swirl where I have a nice smooth line and I come out again with the little bumps. Now notice the side of the line on which I'm drawing the bumps. I call this the outside of each line, or maybe the top side. Again, I'm going to add more bumps here, and I'm going to go around and fill in all the spaces with extra bumps so there's no gaps. Then I'm going to do another swirl, and again I'm going to come back out on the outside or the back side of the spiral. If you were to do the inside, it would look different. In fact, let me show you one that wouldn't look as good. So now let me show you one that looks a little bit different and doesn't work. I'm going to do my spiral, but instead of bumping on the correct side, I'm going to go on the inside of the spiral. It's not terrible, but notice how it looks like a completely different design. You could always bump like this, and then you could pick it up on the outside if you wanted to. Am I going to notice if that's really in my quilt? Is that going to bother me? Not at all. But again, the idea is if you do it on the outside of each line, you're going to add these cute little bumps and they're going to turn into cute little spiral flowers. Let me fill in some more bumps. And again, just like all of the designs I'm showing you, the important part is to fill in all the spaces. Now, as I draw out these designs, I'm just doing this on a little iPad for practice. You can do this on some scrap paper. There's also some other computer programs you could try. But what I'm not doing is I'm not marking this on the quilt, because the idea, add some more bumps here, the idea is that this is all very fun and organic. It's what I call handcrafted machine quilting. So what you're stitching may not look exactly like what you are drawing. This is all just an approximation to show you what the design would look like. And of course, when I'm stitching it out, I'm not going to use black thread on white fabric, or else you would see every little imperfection like what I'm showing you when I'm drawing. Instead, I'm going to use a thread color that's going to blend into my fabrics so that all you see is this really yummy texture. Filling in some more bumps. It's a little bit of a hot mess, but as you see me when I stitch it out, my stitching is going to look really good. As I quilt this Spiral Flowers free motion design, that means that my feed dogs are dropped so I can actually stitch in any direction. Now you'll see that I'm using a specialty free motion foot to fit my machine, and mine happens to have an open toe so I can really see what I'm doing. Now your foot might look different, but the important part is you want to be able to stitch in any direction, and you want to lower your feed dog so you can do that. As I'm stitching, I'm trying to aim for a smooth, fluid movement with my quilting. Now this is going to get easier and smoother the more times you practice, I promise. As I quilt my basic swirl shape, I'm starting with a nice curving tail and then adding these little bumps or flower petals to get my way back out of each swirl, and I'm going to go back into the next one. So it's kind of like a regular swirl, except you're adding these little bumps, these little petals to kind of jazz it up a little bit. As I'm stitching, I'm trying to regulate my stitches myself by keeping a consistent speed between how fast I'm moving my hands relative to how fast the machine is stitching. But you know what? Don't overthink it. Just kind of go with the flow. You're building a new muscle memory, and it's a lot to get used to, especially if you're a beginner. But the more you do it, the more it becomes natural and comfortable, and it becomes like second nature. Just remember, your eye will notice a gap in the quilting before you notice any imperfections in the design. So just try to fill in all the areas with the same design, even if your stitches aren't totally perfect. I personally love the look of handcrafted machine quilting, so you can tell it was actually made by a person rather than a computer. So bring on the inconsistencies. They add a little charm and whimsy to your quilt. So now I'm just going to continue to quilt my fun little flower swirls and enjoy the process. I'll add more swirls wherever I want to, and then I'm going to fill in any odd spaces with extra bumps, flower petals, lines, what have you, to fill it all in. It's also okay to rotate your quilt if you need to get a better position, or if you need to turn it a little bit so you can kind of see what you're doing. All that stuff is totally fine. You can also use the tips of your fingers to hold down those edges as you stitch. Now, if you feel like you're getting stuck or you stitch yourself into a corner, just stop with your needle down and then see where you need to go next. It's okay to take a break, stop and breathe, and tell yourself, I need to go left or up or down or to the right. It's all good. It's also okay to backtrack, which means stitching on top of a previous line of stitching to move your way around the quilt. As you quilt your spiral flowers, you can really make them any size, and you can vary the scale and density of each one. Just remember, the more whimsical, the better. And here's another tip. Remember, you aren't quilting a large quilt all at one time. You're only quilting about 5 or 6 inches or whatever the area is in between your hands. When you keep that area nice and smooth, then you can let the bulk of the quilt be outside of that area and bunch up around you, and it's not going to affect your stitch quality at all. Kind of think of it as what I call hills and valleys. The area in between my hands is the nice flat valley, and the bulk of the quilt scrunched up around me are all the hills. So you're actually going to spend more time moving your hands and readjusting your quilt than you actually will spend time quilting. So if you know that ahead of time going into it, you're going to be less stressed out and you're not doing anything wrong. Just be careful not to let your fingers get too close to the needle, and make sure you stop quilting with the needle in the down position. Because anytime you need to stop and start and figure out where you're going, keeping that needle in the down position will help make that next starting stitch a little bit smoother when you have to keep going. Now, right now, I'm quilting with a darker thread on light fabric, so you're going to see all my imperfections. But I promise you, when I'm stitching this on a real quilt with blending thread, it's going to look 10 times better. Here's my finished sample for spiral flowers. Aren't they pretty? Now let me show you a fun variation called Wavy Spirals. This is a great design if, say, you can't get your lines perfectly smooth and even, then just embrace the imperfection and make that part of the design. Basically, the way I do this design is I'm just wiggling and waving as I go, but I'm going with the basic spiral shape, which is where I do a kind of a circle design. I echo my way back out, and I'm just stitching with regular straight stitching using my free motion foot, but I'm wiggling the sample as I go, and I'm not trying to be perfectly even. This design almost looks like a topographical map. It could really add a lot of texture to landscape quilts, something where you don't want it to be perfectly even and smooth. So the idea is I'm just doing this basic spiral shape, and I'm wiggling my way back in, echoing and filling in the odd areas with other lines. If you touch your lines or stitch on top of a previous line called backtracking, that's perfectly fine. The idea here is you're just adding this fun texture. Now, whenever you notice me going off the edges, that can represent the edge of the quilt where maybe there's some fabric or batting sticking out, and I'm just stitching and filling in all the spaces. This one's really kind of fun and carefree, maybe really good for like a whimsical quilt or just any quilt where you want to add some interesting texture that you're not going to see on a regular traditional quilt. I'll fill in the rest of the spaces, and then I will show you what this looks like when I'm stitching this out on a real practice sample. As you watch me free motion quilt these wavy spirals, you'll notice that what I'm stitching doesn't look exactly like the quilting plan that I just sketched out. So the reason for this is that whenever I'm doodling each design on my sketch pad first, I do that to kind of make my way around and figure out what the design's going to look like. But when it's time to actually quilt the quilt, I rarely mark my quilts because I really like that organic, natural look as I'm stitching. So both of them serve good purposes and they work together, even though I don't actually mark what I'm stitching on the quilt. But drawing it out ahead of time really helps you figure out how to make your way continuously, how to get out of tight corners, and it kind of develops that muscle memory for you that helps make it easier to translate when you actually get to the real quilt. So my wavy spirals are the same basic design as a regular free motion spiral that we did earlier. However, I'm just wiggling my sample as I stitch. It's not a special stitch or anything crazy. I'm just wiggling, giving a little bit of resistance and adding a little bit of elbow grease to form this kind of fun geometric design. It's a really cool design for those of you, especially who stress about quilting perfectly straight lines. Just really give in to the wiggle. And I'm giving you permission to play around, enjoy the process, and embrace a perfectly imperfect quilting design. By the way, isn't it fun how much you can change up your design with just a few tweaks? This version of spirals or swirls reminds me of maybe a topographical map or maybe a rock geode that's a little rough around the edges. It looks really cool in nature or landscape quilts as well. No matter what you call the design or how you want to stitch it, the important thing is to have fun while you're doing it. And just remember, there's no wrong way to quilt, and everyone is going to have their own unique free motion quilting penmanship. So as I stitch out my samples, I'm thinking about how I would quilt this design edge to edge on my quilt. I'm going to fill in all of the design on one half of my sample or quilt, then I would rotate the quilt and continue stitching from the center back over to the other side. Now, some quilters prefer to start stitching in the middle of their quilts, and that's perfectly fine too. Just do whatever feels most comfortable for you. After all, there's no quilt police here. Now for me, when I'm stitching, I like to work my way methodically across the quilt from edge to edge. It's easier for me to maneuver the bulk of the quilt as I go, and this is something I've kind of worked on over the years, so it works. This design is so fun and forgiving to quilt, so I'm going to just continue stitching and wiggling and forming these organic wavy spirals to fill in all the areas of my sample. I haven't yet quilted this one on a full-size quilt yet, but it's definitely on my bucket list to do. My finished sample for free motion wavy spirals is a more organic looking version of spiral flowers. Aren't those fun? You just really can't go wrong with swirls. Now let's take a closer look at the quilt behind me called Surplus Strips. So when I quilted this one, I chose the flower spiral because I thought it really went with the vibe of the quilt. This quilt pattern is made from my fabric collection called Dazzle Dots 2, which has all these really soft pastels, and so I thought that kind of all jived really well together. Be sure to check the description box for a bonus video showing how I quilted this entire quilt. And you know what? If you want to get better at machine quilting, pick one design and stitch it from edge to edge across your quilt. By the time you're done, you're going to be an expert at that design. And you know what? If for some reason you don't like the quilt, just give it away. The person is going to love it and they're going to think it's amazing. Just remember, I'm here to cheer you on every step of the way. Until next time, happy quilting.